In today's lesson, we'll be learning about surface area. Here are the area equations for a rectangle, triangle, and parallelogram. These should be all review. It is important to remember that if there is no operation between a letter and or a number, that means the operation is multiplication. For the triangle, there are two equations for area, but they mean exactly the same thing and you'll get exactly the same answer. Over here, I have area is equal to 1/2 times base times height. Whereas over here, I have area is equal to base times height, then divided by 2. You will get the same answer if you use either equation. Here are the area equations for trapezoid and circle. For the trapezoid, there are two equations which means exactly the same thing and which will give you exactly the same answer. Over here, I have area is equal to a plus b, then multiplied by h, and then divided by 2. While over here, I have 1/2 multiplied by a plus b, then multiplied by h. You'll get the exact same answer for either equation. For a circle, the area is equal to pi multiplied by r squared. It is important to remember that r squared is not r multiplied by 2. It is the radius multiplied by itself. And if you've forgotten, pi is equal to 3.14. In our first example, we want to determine the surface area of a square-based pyramid which has a base of 3 centimeters and a slant height of 4 centimeters. The first thing you want to do is label your diagram with these numbers. So this is 3 centimeters. And the slant height is 4 centimeters. What exactly is the slant height? Well, it is the distance between the apex of your pyramid and one of the sides of the base, but it has to make a 90-degree angle with the base. Okay, so that is going to be 4 centimeters. If we want to find the surface area of the square-based pyramid, we're going to have to find the area of each of these faces. So we have 4 triangular faces and 1 square face. That means we're going to be using 2 specific equations. Let's write that down. The area of a triangle is equal to base times height over 2. Remember, there are 2 equations for area of a triangle. You can use either of them. Use whichever you're comfortable with. And then we have the area of a square, which is basically the same thing as a rectangle, and that is just length multiplied by width. When you're trying to find the surface area of a square-based pyramid, it is easier to deconstruct the actual 3D shape into something called a net. So these are those pieces of paper that you use to glue together to make shapes when you were in elementary school. Let's begin by relabeling our diagram. So we know that the base is 3 centimeters and the slant height is 4 centimeters. So I'm going to label that as 3 centimeters. And the slant height, remember, is the distance from the apex to the base, and it has to make a 90-degree angle, and that is 4 centimeters. Let's start with the area of the base, which is a square. So I'm going to say the area of a square is equal to length times width. You know that the sides of a square are all equal, so the length and width will have the same number. So let's just put that in brackets. So the length is 3 and the width is 3. 3 times 3 is 9, and the unit we're using here is centimeters, and because it's area, it is centimeters squared. Next, we want to figure out the area of each of these triangles. All of them are equal, so let's just figure out the area of one of them. So the area of a triangle is base times height divided by 2. You know that the base is 3 centimeters, so let's put that in brackets. And the height is actually the slant height, so that would be 4 centimeters in brackets. And the divide by 2 stays exactly the same. So we're going to look at the numerator first. 3 multiplied by 4 is 12. So then you have 12 divided by 2. And 12 divided by 2 is 6 centimeters. And because we're working with area, it's going to be 6 centimeters squared. Now, we are not finished yet. Remember, we have 4 triangles. Therefore, we're going to have to multiply our value of 6 centimeters by 4. Make a little note of that down below. So what you could say is the total area for the triangles is 6 multiplied by 4 because there are 4 triangles present. So 6 times 4 is 24, and we are using centimeters squared. Therefore, we can take this number, which is the area of the base, and this number, which is the area of the triangular sides, and we can add them up to figure out the total area, or the total surface area of the pyramid, I should say. So let's go ahead and make a note about that. So surface area, I'm just going to use SA as a short form, is going to be equal to 9 centimeters squared plus 24 centimeters squared. And you just throw those numbers into the calculator or do that in your head. So 9 plus 24 is 32 centimeters squared. And let's write a concluding statement. So let's say, therefore, the surface area is 32 centimeters squared. So that is how you figure out the surface area of a 3-dimensional shape. You deconstruct it into its net, then determine the area of each of those individual faces. In our last example, we want to determine the surface area of a cylinder which has a base with radius 2 centimeters and a height of 6 centimeters. So let's take our given pieces of information and let's label our diagram. So we know that the height is 6 centimeters, and we know that the radius is 2 centimeters. If we're trying to figure out the surface area of a cylinder, that means we're going to have to find the area of each of the faces and add them up. So the bottom and top of the cylinder is pretty simple because those are circles. And the equation for area of a circle is pi r squared. Now, how do you figure out the surface area of the curved part of the cylinder? Well, the curved part of the cylinder actually is a rectangle. So that is just length times width. We need to use one other equation, which is not necessarily obvious. We need to find the circumference of the top and bottom of the cylinder. And if you recall, the equation for circumference is 2 pi r, or pi multiplied by diameter. If you want to find the surface area of a cylinder, the best idea is to deconstruct your 3-dimensional shape and to create a net, which will give us 2 circles and a rectangle. Let's relabel our net. So I know that the radius of these circles are 2 centimeters, and I already know that the height of my cylinder is 6 centimeters. However, there's one more piece of information that I do not have, but I need. If I'm trying to figure out the area of a rectangle, I need the side lengths of the length and width, but I only have one of those measurements. I still need this. Okay? Well, turns out that side length is actually the same thing as that circumference. Let's begin by figuring out the circumference of that circle. So circumference is equal to 2 multiplied by pi multiplied by r. So the 2 stays exactly the same. Pi can be approximated to be 3.14, and the radius here is 2 centimeters. Remember, if there is no operation between numbers, that means it is multiplication. So what I have is 2 multiplied by 3.14 multiplied by 2. You can go ahead and throw that into your calculator, and you should get approximately 12.56. And that is going to be in centimeters. So let's go ahead and label this as 12.56 centimeters. Since we now have both side lengths of the rectangle, let's go ahead and figure out the area of this rectangle. So, area of a rectangle is equal to length multiplied by width. I already know what the length is. I just calculated that, and that was 12.56. And I already know the width. That was given. So that was 6 centimeters. What you do now is just multiply those two numbers in your calculator. So 12.56 multiplied by 6, and that is 75.36 centimeters squared, since we're now working with area. Last but not least, we need to figure out the areas of the two circles. So let's go ahead and do that. So the area of a circle is equal to pi r squared. All right, so let's substitute in our known values. I know that pi is approximately 3.14, and I know that the radius is 2 centimeters, and that's going to be squared. Now, a lot of students make this mistake. They think squaring is multiplying by 2, but in fact, squaring is a number being multiplied by itself. So the 3.14 stays exactly the same, and 2 squared is 2 multiplied by itself. So 2 times 2 is 4. All you need to do now is take 3.14 and multiply it by 4, and that is going to be 12.56 centimeters squared. Now, don't forget that you have two circles, so I need to take this number and multiply it by 2. I'm going to make a little note on the side. I'm going to say total area of the circles is equal to 12.56 multiplied by 2. That is equal to 25.12 square centimeters. So all I need to do is total up the area of all my different shapes, and that will give me the surface area of my cylinder. So I'm going to take this number, and I'm going to add them together. So I'm going to do that down here. I'm going to say surface area is equal to 75.36 square centimeters plus 25.12 square centimeters. You put that in a calculator, you are going to get 100.48 square centimeters. And I'm going to end this with a concluding statement. Therefore, the surface area is 100.48 square centimeters.